Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. Our big focus this hour. Mark Carney and Donald Trump have run into yet another flashpoint. Not over the World Economic Forum, not Greenland, not even those familiar controversial maps from Trump, but this time over Alberta. Reports suggest that Alberta separatist groups have held multiple meetings with officials linked to the Trump administration. These reports have rattled Ottawa. Responding to the developments, Mark Carney said Canada expects the US to respect Canadian sovereignty and its internal affairs, but this has also reignited a sharp question: is this position consistent, and isn't it hypocritical of them? India has also, of course, accused Canada numerous times of why they are allowing Khalistani elements to operate freely on its soil, calling it a direct threat to India's sovereignty and security. Canada, however, has maintained that it is protecting free speech and due process. As Ottawa demands non-interference in Washington, can Canada's ideas of sovereignty be selective? Joining us live, Ambassador Manju Seth, former diplomat; Eric Wahlberg, senior journalist, also joins us live; Harinder Sikka, author and activist, is live with us; Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, is joining us live on the broadcast as well. Let me make a start with you first, Ambassador Manju Seth, on what you make of this selectivism that Canada often shows. Obviously ignores conveniently the Khalistani extremists within their soil who threaten India's sovereignty, as India has reminded them time and again, and is concerned about their own sovereignty, as we've seen in this latest statement.
I think this is one more example of the West's double standards and double speak, I think, in many ways. Of course, now, that the Western alliance, or whatever you want to call it, is under threat, is under rupture now, and when they are being sort of targeted by another country, lending support to their separatist movement in Alberta, the Canadians are very, very, upset and talking about sovereignty. But of course, when India was talking about it and saying that the Khalistanis are trying for a separate state, they said it was free speech. So now, they have been, as we've been seeing for many years, including the term that was used for terrorism, good and bad terrorists, and your terrorist and your terrorist is a good terrorist, my terrorist is a bad terrorist. So similar kind of approach even on this issue. Your separatists are good, my separatists is bad. So that kind of approach, I think, is continuing in this particular instance. But I think also Canada is beginning to chafe, should I say, under this onslaught by the US, one after the other. And Alberta, as we all know, is a very oil-rich province of part of Canada, and I think they want to. The US is very clear. President Trump is very clear. As much energy resources as possible that he can just confiscate. I think it's literally like confiscation and annexation is the way he's going about it. But I think the Albertans, I'm not so sure, really want to be annexed, but we don't know what President Trump will do, because he is quite, on a roll, so to speak, trying to annex this country, that country, Iran, everywhere, wherever he sees, oil, I think, and energy resources. He is just going after each of those countries and each of those places, and one after the other. So it's a very difficult situation, and it's becoming more and more untenable for the rest of the world to put up with President Trump's, new sort of attacks, or novel attacks, should I say, every other day. And I believe that for India also, we must keep in mind that yes, with Canada we are, we're going to reset our relationship, and we have a good relationship coming up under this new government. But we have to make it very clear to them that the Khalistani movement is a separatist movement, and they need to take action against that.
Eric Wahlberg, let me draw you in here on this scandal that seems to have erupted over these meetings. Now, how many meetings took place? How long back was this? And how is the Carney government reacting to this and taking it up with Washington, D.C.?
Well, there haven't been a lot of meetings. There have been 3 meetings last year, which perhaps that is a lot. It's 0 should be the number of meetings. So just the fact that there were these meetings. But I'm not really too concerned about this threat, so-called. Only 20% of Albertans think that it might be a good idea to join the United States. But that's the same as all of Canada. If you do an opinion poll, 75% of Canadians say Canada, we're proud, we don't want to join the US. But about 20-25%, a lot of the immigrants, a lot of even these Khalistani immigrants, everyone that comes to Canada basically wants to go to the United States as immigrants because it's a bigger country, there's more opportunity. It's just a much more exciting country. Canada is very boring. It's northern. It's kind of out on the edge in terms of politics. So, but I agree that with the ambassador that it's wrong to allow open pursuit of Khalistani independence. That should be a red line. But at the same time, you don't want a heavy-handed government that is preventing these emigres from India. Some of them, they consider themselves political refugees. You can't just put a zip on their mouth. You know, I mean, they want to speak about their history, and there should be enough openness that you allow people freedom of speech without going to the point of creating some kind of international scandal or incident. Because Canada has had trouble with terrorists from India that blew up a plane in the 1980s. That it was a terrible event, and there should be good control. And I think that perhaps the ambassador is right that we need to have a bit more of that control. But again, this idea of a petition, a referendum, that would require 200,000 signatures, and I don't really see that materializing. And I think that, as I said, the general opinion of Albertans is really in line with the opinion of all Canadians about independence or whether or not we should even consider joining the United States. What was really delightful yesterday is the ex-governor of Minnesota. I'm sorry, I've forgotten his name. He was quite a colorful character about 10 years ago. He said, why don't we join Canada? Canada would be delighted to have us come. We're being treated horribly here in the United States.
Okay.
Let's join Canada.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Let me draw you back in here, Harinder Sikka, on, of course, this idea of secessionism in Alberta that the US, seems to quite fancy because of their designs that they have on Canada. They also have designs on Greenland. Perhaps there will be secessionist meetings there too. But is this now a wake-up call for Canada? Should they now realize how dangerous secessionism is and how such elements should be cracked down upon within their soil too?
We should start with the ground reality. The Canadians in general should thank Mr. Trudeau for inviting Khalistanis, giving them camps and support, and allowing Khalistanis to demean India. We warned them. We warned the Canadians. There was no point in speaking to Trudeau, but many messages, many emails, many social media conversations happened. But that guy was bent in ruining Canada. And Khalistanis realized that, they have back support. They used Khalistani flags, they used money, they used gurdwaras as a drug trafficking racket, and they became very rich. They realized that perhaps we can grab a little more and mix up with America. So it is not Americans' fault, it is not Trump's fault. You have enemy at home who has done this, and if you do not wake up even now, it's going to be a reality. The same mistake we do it in India. We We, in the name of secularism, we allow Sharia law to be included, and when they become too much, they kick you out. So, what is the solution? The problem we all know what is happening. Will Canada wake up now? All they need to do is chuck them out, throw them out, cancel their visas. It's part of their regulatory mechanism. You cannot be living in a country at their cost, at the exchequer's account, and spew venom. You have the power to throw them out. And throw them out where? Give it back to us. You have a lot of score to settle with them. But you did not. Trudeau's father, what did he do? The man who hijacked or destroyed the Air India aircraft or mid-air and killed so many people was accommodated by Trudeau's father. So get your leadership in order, Canada. This is going to harm you so deep that your future generations will curse you. And this is happening. This is on your doors now. And once that happens, it will be very, very difficult to undo it. As regards to these Khalistanis, they can be anything but Sikhs. Let me tell you very categorically, Sikhs are not Khalistanis, and Khalistanis cannot be Sikhs. Nobody taught us this to do. We are meant to protect, not to attack. Defend, yes, but not to ruin our own system, our own country. We belong to Hindustan. If we live abroad, we serve there also. And that routine, that teachings, that in the name of Guru Nanak to Guru Gobind Singh Ji, we have never ever looted anybody. We have never ever gone and raped women. We have never ever gone and joined hands with enemy. It's not in the teachings. Who has taught you all this? But you can ask them as many questions that you want, as many questions you want. They are not what they are pretending to be.
Yes.
By shouting slogans and throwing some drug money here and drug money there, and utilizing every possible opportunity to become what they do, what they are not, in tomorrow's time, they will be also in a similar trouble. If you are a traitor, you will not be trusted, whether it is in India or in Canada.
You know, let me draw you in here, Madhav Nalapat, on, of course, these, this storm that has erupted over these fresh meetings. Do you believe this is going to lead to a big flashpoint, a new flashpoint between the US and Canada? We've seen how recently at Davos too, there was a huge flashpoint and back and forth. What are you making of these revelations emerging? Are you surprised? Are you not really surprised? And what are the implications going to be, the wider ones?
Uday, let me point out that the Khalistanis make a lot of money out of illegal smuggling of goods, a lot of them from China, and narcotics and various other nefarious activities. They make a lot of money about that. Now what they're doing is exploiting a loophole in the law, and the loophole is very clear that while they may attack each other, and you may hear of Khalistanis killing each other, you don't hear them killing mainstream Canadians as such in Montreal or Toronto, or any of the big cities. They don't kill them. So the problem is that Canada, like the UK and like the US also, I'm sorry to say, it does not bother if there are people who have committed violence in India, so long as they don't commit violence in Canada or the US or the UK. And that is a loophole that must be closed. And I think Indian diplomacy is working very hard to close it. You cannot have friendly relations with the country. You cannot have normal trade relations with the country, which is basically sheltering people who are, let's face it, terrorists. And I want to point out something about the Khalistan people, what I call the K group. Well, if you're so interested in rectifying the wrongs of history, what about all the huge amount of territory that the glorious Sikh community lost in Pakistan, Punjab? The Sikhs were literally driven out. by pillage and assault of their women and takeover of their homes and killing. There were entire compartments of trains coming into India with the dead bodies of noble Sikhs. And the Sikhs were a very prosperous community in Pakistan, Punjab, and they did extremely well, and they're very peaceful. There's no question of any violence, and yet they were slaughtered and massacred in Pakistan, Punjab. So I'm asking the K group people, if you're so concerned about the Sikh community, then why aren't you concerned about the atrocities that took place in Pakistan, Punjab, where there is, where in India, yes, we had a problem of riot during one time, and that is very unfortunate. But the reality of the situation is that the mass genocide of Sikhs that we saw took place during 46-47 in Pakistan, Punjab. And the K group are showing their hypocrisy, but as well as, of course, the Canadian government for sheltering them because they don't do any damage to Canada. Well, the reality is we are in a globalized world order. We need to have a globalized trade system, and you can't trade with a country that is harboring and sheltering terrorists. So now, for example, India and Canada are signing some major deals on commerce, people-to-people relations, and on energy. So I hope, therefore, the necessary diplomatic ballast will be created for us to ensure that this kind of element, which frankly behaves in an extremely un-Canadian manner. Canadians overall are very peaceful people, including 95% of the Sikh community. They're very peaceful, they're very hardworking, and very law-abiding. So I think, Uday, that we cannot abandon the path of diplomacy. We have to continue on the path of diplomacy and ensure that sooner than later that this kind of activity against India is stopped, because India and Canada now under Mark Carney and Prime Minister Modi are having a terrific reincarnation of good relations. Justin Trudeau helped the Khalistan, the K people, K group people. He gave visas to known Khalistanis, and his visa officers would ask, do you believe in Khalistan or not? And if some Sikh said, no, I don't believe in it, that was the end. There was no visa. So finally, what happened was, unless you're acknowledged to be a Khalistani, unless you profess to be a Khalistani, even if you're not, you're not admitted to Canada. That was Justin Trudeau. Mark Carney is much better, but I think he needs to improve his record. And there's certainly a lot of hypocrisy where Canada is concerned.
Yes.
Where the US is concerned, because the US is freely meeting, people who are involved with terrorism in different parts of the world, but they don't do anything about them. And the same thing is happening in the case of Canada. And I think we need to make a special effort to ensure, at least in Canada, this kind of activity is stopped.
Are you hopeful now? Are you hopeful?
Giving a very bad name
Yes.
to a very noble and glorious community.
Yes.
With a very proud history of struggle.
Yes.
Against dictatorial invaders.
Yes.
A great noble history. They were created for that purpose by the great gurus of Sikhism.
But how hopeful are you? But how hopeful are you going forward? Harinder Sikka, that there is going to be a change in the outlook of Mark Carney towards this? How hopeful are you that there is going to be a more seriousness about this issue of tackling Khalistani elements on their soil, if they are serious about what India is saying now? And also, will they realize how unfortunate it is to needle secessionism, as the US has attempted to do in this case in Alberta, which they're upset about, which Ottawa is upset about? Harinder Sikka.
Sorry, I missed that question. Can you come back, please?
Are you able to hear me, Mr. Sikka? Is my voice going through to you?
I cannot hear you.
Okay, I was trying to ask you about how hopeful you are now that there will be a change in attitude and a change in stance of the Carney administration towards the issue of tackling Khalistani elements on its soil, given that they are serious now about forging better relations with India, unlike what happened in the Trudeau regime. Also, Now, hopefully, they will realize what needling
I'm losing
secessionism.
you. I can't hear you.
Hopefully, they will realize what needling secessionism does, as US has attempted to do in Alberta, Mr. Sikka.
No, I'm hearing you, Alberta. But
Okay, I think Mr. Sikka is. We've lost Mr. Sikka there. Are you able to hear me, Mr. Wahlberg?
Yes. Could you just ask me again?
Yes, Mr. Wahlberg. You know how extreme is this sentiment of secessionism in Alberta, and what really is the Trump administration attempting through this? Do you believe they could attempt it in Greenland too?
Well, there isn't any extreme fight for independence in Alberta. That is just wishful thinking on the part of Trump. Trump, he sees what he wants to see. He's like a child. He doesn't really see the difference between his own fantasies and reality. The reality is there is no serious threat of independence. And actually, Mark Carney, the first thing he did when he came into office was he promised and he signed a deal for a new pipeline for Alberta. He went right out to Alberta and he sweet talked to the premier there, and she was very happy. And this really quelled any idea of independence for Alberta. But also Carney is smart. He sees Trump is a totally unreliable, and America is a totally unreliable ally, quote unquote ally. And he went to China just before the WEF, World Economic Forum. He was in China signing a deal to export the oil to China. So Canada's oil goes from Alberta to British Columbia in a pipeline, which environmentalists are very angry about, me included, because the idea is we're going to export this oil, but the coastline is very fragile. And the idea of a Chinese tanker coming in and having an oil spill would be a disaster. So you see, in Canada, we're really caught between the devil and the deep blue sea, if you like, between Trump and the China. And we've chosen to move towards China to reduce our dependence on America, because America is a big threat. That America just like that could move in and take over Canada. Look what he did to Venezuela. Look what he's doing to poor Iran and his idea of Greenland. So I think we're in a much better position with Carney, that he is able, as the Sikh colleague mentioned, that Trudeau Jr. Was very kind of laid back about Sikh separatism, and he didn't really pay attention.
Yes.
So
yes.
I'm sure Carney is much more on the ball. So
Professor Nalapat, if I can rope you back in here, you know, why do we see this hypocrisy time and time again from the West, where if it suits them, it's secessionism, if it doesn't, it's free speech? And how hopeful are you that this attitude, this double-speak, this hypocrisy will end anytime soon?
Uday, there is no question of free speech in the United States now. Under Trump, definitely not. For example, if you make something that Trump construes as anti-Trump, and then he makes it anti-Republican, he makes it very confrontational, and he goes after you. And unfortunately, he built up a cadre of police, ICE, which is unfortunately guilty of tactics that would rival that of the Gestapo. And so that is the sad reality in America today. I mean, people like you and me, looking like you and me, will be at high risk of being accosted by ICE and told to produce our papers. And sometimes they're extremely unreasonable. I've heard cases in which even valid passports with valid US visas were produced, and the ICE officers arrested those people. And unfortunately, sometimes they don't just arrest, they push you to the floor. And if you're very unlucky, they might shoot you, and that's the end of your life. The United States is now a very different country from from what it was before Trump took over. And frankly, Trump himself is very different from what he was during his campaign and the initial months of his presidency. The last 4 or 5 months of his presidency have been a nightmare for the United States and a nightmare for the world, because the man has become completely unpredictable, completely off base, and he says and does anything that he likes, and he rambles on and on and on with sometimes very conflicting opinions. One opinion, and then, after about 40 minutes, another opinion, the exact opposite is given. So frankly, expecting President Trump to do anything is not going to be realistic, let's face it. But Canada under Mark Carney is, of course, much better option, in the sense that Mark Carney is a realistic chap, and if he finds that the majority of Sikhs are not with Khalistan, and secondly, that the India-Canada relationship is that's very important, and he should develop it as he seems to have, unlike President Trump, who has frankly, pushed the India-US relationship under the bus, and to the dismay of so many people in the US itself, not just India. So I'd like to say, Uday, that unfortunately, I agree with one of the previous speakers. As far as President Trump is concerned, he is completely out of control, and to expect him to suddenly go back to what he was. I really did that for about 2.5, 3 months, and then I gave up. I realized this is on a one-way street, and that one way is only downhill, in a sense that he gets progressively worse
Right.
until finally he is impeached by the US Congress and replaced by Vice President J.D. Vance. Thank you, Uday.
My thanks to all of our guests for joining us. We've run totally out of time. Unfortunately, I think we've lost the audio of a couple of our guests, but we'll be tracking this story. For the time being, we are taking a very short break. We're back on the other side with lots more.